so now I'm recording. I forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot to record. All right. So if we take a look here once again, in the short run, we have to cover the average variable cost of the cost curves in the short run. If we fall, if the price falls below this point right here, then we're going to shut down, right? Shutdown is temporary, right? That shutdown is temporary. In the long run, what price do we have to cover? Sam, you had average total cost, so we have to go here. So in the long run, this is the long run supply curve for a firm. So as long as the price is greater than or equal to the average total cost, it'll stay open. So if the price is essentially, if they could be making a loss in the short run, if they're below the average total cost, if they're below the average total cost, they can make stay open in the short run, making that loss because they're at least covering their fixed costs. Okay, so this is the basic ideas of our cost curves. Okay, we also calculated marginal revenue. We learned how to do that. So when we think about cost curves, we says marginal cost is equal to the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. Marginal revenue is equal to the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. Then we calculated average total cost, average fixed costs, and average variable costs. And we know if we add these two up, they end up being that, right? That's basic stuff that we've learned, right? And like, for example, average variable cost is just variable cost divided by quantity. Average fixed cost is fixed cost divided by quantity. And average total cost is total cost divided by quantity. Okay. So that's just some basic stuff here. Okay. So now when we talk about perfectly competitive market, remember in a perfectly competitive market, it's really easy to enter and exit the market. Okay. Really easy. So if we take a look here, this would be the perfectly competitive market, the demand, the supply, the price, the quantity, right? So this is the market, let's say for Snicker bars. Then if we look at the firm, all right, so if we look at, this is Alex's firm, right? His firm would have to take, because they're price takers, they're going to take this price, whatever this price is, let's say it's P1, that's his price. Okay. What else is this curve? This perfectly flat, perfectly elastic curve. What else does it represent for Alex's firm? Marginal revenue. Yep, Mr. Well, it's if you remember, it's Mr. DARP. So Mr. DARP means it represents the marginal revenue curve, the demand curve, the average revenue, and the price. All of those are this curve right here. Okay. Then we're going to produce where MC equals MR. Okay. So right here, this point right here at this quantity is where we are going to produce MC equals MR. That is where we either maximize our profit or we minimize our loss. Now, what happens, let me change the color here. What happens if we're producing where marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost? What should this firm do if they're producing where marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost? What should they do? They should increase production, absolutely, because then they must mean they're somewhere over here, let's say, and they should increase production, right? So then if marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue, that means they're somewhere over here and they should decrease production, okay? So that's why we're always going to produce right here, because that's where we maximize our profits, okay? Now, if we wanted to figure out what is the total revenue here, we would take this P1, which is the price, times this Q1. that would give us our total revenue. Okay, that would give us our total revenue because remember, this is the price that Alex has to abide by that is created by the market right here. Now, if something happens in the market, let's say the economy, whatever he's selling becomes popular and moves this way, then we can see what happens. The price goes up, and what happens? He's going to produce more goods then, right? He'll produce more goods, right? Now, what happens at this new price right here if he's making economic profit? If he's making profit, what will happen? Yeah, more firms will enter the market. Absolutely. More firms will enter the market. And as more firms enter the market, the market supply curve would shift to the right, which would then lower the price, right? Depends on how many firms keep adding. Okay. So more firms will enter the market. All right. So if we take a look here, um, let's just say this is Alex's market. Here is the price, which we know is also the marginal revenue and the average revenue and the demand curve. Here is the marginal cost curve. Let's say we're at P1 here. Let's say this is the average total cost. This is the average variable cost. Now my graphs aren't very good because I'm writing on a board around the touch screen, so I'm sorry it's not getting closer and closer. Um, what is this? What is Alex's firm doing here? He's making economic profit. Okay, he's making economic profit because he's going to produce right here, and we can see that his cost then is right here. This is, I'll put PC for his cost. Okay, is right here. Okay, so this is profit. Now, that's going to encourage other firms to enter the market, which will then cause the um, price to fall. And as the price falls, we know that because we know the marginal cost curve is downward sloping here this way, that as the price falls, he's going to actually start producing less and less as more firms enter the market and cause the price to fall. This right here is his break even point. He'll still stay in all the way to here. And in the short run, if he falls below this, he will shut down. In the long run, if it falls below this point right here, what would he do in the long run if he fell below the average total cost there? Yeah, he would exit the market, and exit the market means leaving the market forever. Okay, that's what it means. You're going to leave the market forever. Okay, so understanding basic characteristics of the perfectly competitive market is something that you need to be able to do. Okay. Now let's take a look at let's try another one. Let's say we are here. Here is the marginal revenue. We know that's the price and the demand curve. Let's say what's happening in this graph. He's making a loss, correct, but anything else? He'll stay open in the short run, but not in the long run. Okay, that's absolutely right. Okay, he's covering his variable costs, so he'll stay open. Now, for some, because every firm, so let's say this is Alex, this is his firm, right? There are thousands of other firms. Some other firms might have higher costs. So for some firms, they might at this point be exiting the market or shutting down. Other firms could be making a profit because everyone has different costs. But over the long run, things start to balance out. That's why in a perfectly competitive market, they're all price takers. And the goal is like here, if I'm making a loss, Alex might go, well, what can I do to go from making a loss to a profit? Well, he could reduce his costs. Okay. Now the fixed costs he's not going to be able to change, but he could do something that causes his cost curves to fall, which will then help him make maybe a profit. Maybe he cuts the amount of workers, or he uses a generic product to produce it. Why would that make have different costs if we're in a perfectly competitive market is made up of identical products? Well, identical products, you're right, but let's say minimum wage now is what, 9.25, and minimum wage went up to 9.25, and let's say I was one of those people that were like, oh man, I'm going to pay people 15 even though minimum wage is only 9.25. Well, that affects my costs, right? Because I'm paying people an hourly wage. So I might either cut the amount of workers that are working for me, or I might say, you're going to have to take a wage cut if you want to stay in. And because I'm making, like, let's say perfectly competitive market, like, uh, I don't know, spinners, and remember them little widget spinner things. Maybe I use a cheaper plastic, or something like that, or I buy in greater bulk to lessen my costs of buying them. Oh, hold on. Hold on. Are we still there? Uh, Hello? Are we still there? I don't know what just happened. Are we all still there? Are we on? I don't know what happened. This happened yesterday too. I don't know what. All right. Um, so costs here could cause us to diminish, or lowering costs would be a way to benefit. Okay. Um, what about now? Can we hear me now? All right. I don't know what's going on here. All right. So now eventually we will reach long run equilibrium. Okay. So let's say this is the price. If I kicked off again, please just hang on, and I'll reboot or something like that, and so I can get back on here. So let's say we're at long run equilibrium here, okay? And when we're at long run equilibrium, the average total cost curve is tangent right here, right? We're at long run equilibrium. Okay, everyone see that? So this is long run equilibrium. We're making zero economic profit, but we are making accounting profit. Okay. Now let's say this product, let's say we have constant costs. So let's say the demand curve shifts this way, which now drives the price up, right? So now I'm making economic profit. Well, what will that do? That will cause firms to enter the market until we hit long run equilibrium again. Okay. Does everyone see that? All right. So what will happen is once we hit long run equilibrium, we'll continue to keep coming back to long run equilibrium. Now, the only way that would change is if we can lessen our costs. Okay. So this is kind of what long run equilibrium will look like. If the prices went too low here, if let's say the supply curve went too low to here, then some firms will have to exit the market, but will eventually take us back to long run equilibrium. Okay. So as long as you understand the short run supply curve of a firm, the long run supply curve of the firm, you understand the shutdown point, the exit point, the basic math, um, knowing that it with the constant returns or constant costs. Let me use a different color. This line right here, this line that's kind of straight right here, actually is the long run industry supply curve. Okay, even though this is essentially the demand curve for the firm. Okay, if their costs are increasing, then this curve would end up being like that because costs keep going up and up and up. Okay, when you connect as long runs keep going. All right, so make sure you understand the industry supply curve, which I just did here, right? In the blue, um, the long run industry supply curve, the long run market equilibrium. Um, that's pretty much the basic idea of a perfectly competitive market. Um, this is a good point. This is where we're most efficient. Now, we did talk about allocative efficiency and productive efficiency. Allocative efficiency is essentially this. Allocative efficiency is when we're producing right here. Productive efficiency is when we're producing at the very bottom of the average total cost curve. So here we go. So in this curve, this spot right here where MC equals MR is allocative efficiency. This spot right here is productive efficiency because we have the lowest costs. Okay. Noria, quick question. If fixed costs include everything like rent and insurance, how do you stay open if you can't afford rent, but you can afford labor and raw material? You have to understand, as long as we can cover the variable costs, it's actually cheaper to stay open than to close. Like, like right now with them closing companies down where they can't cover their fixed costs, like right now with they're closing places down. That's why some businesses might shut down because they can't cover any kind of variable costs. Because as long as you cover your variable costs, as you produce more, what's happening to your average fixed costs? They're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, um, it's about having your doors open or not. Okay, because when we talk about covering variable costs, if you can't cover your variable costs, you're going to shut down, and it's actually cheaper to shut down. But if you can't cover your average total cost curves in the long run, then you're going to exit the market. So there are firms that do stay open but make losses in the short run. Um, but you look at like somewhere like Great America. Great America still has bills to pay that are fixed costs, but they make enough in their short season of being open that it covers those fixed costs during the off season. Because you have to plan for that. Like if I know that I'm only open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, then I need to make sure that um, I need to make sure that I stay open um, that I stay open to and make enough money and then save enough of my money to put it in the bank so that I can pay during the off season those fixed costs. Okay. All right. Now, in the long run, in a perfectly competitive market, we said in the long run, average total cost, marginal revenue, marginal cost, right here, that is where we're both allocative and productive efficient. Like this is the best thing we possibly can do right here. Okay. Um, so that is perfectly competitive markets. Okay, that is perfectly competitive markets. Okay, so then we talked about monopolies. Now, monopolies have any questions about perfectly competitive markets? There's more to it. I just don't want to I just don't want to review every single thing because I've got all those videos with everything on there already. Now, a monopoly is a little bit different. A monopoly, you went from a perfectly competitive market where here is the industry and here is the firm, right? Right. In a monopoly, you combine these two because there's only one firm, and this is what you get. You get the downward sloping demand curve, right, for the firm because where this is the demand curve for the firm. Now they're the only producers, so this demand curve goes here, right? And then because in order to sell more, they have to lower the price. So the marginal revenue curve is inside here, right? So that's why you only have one graph. Now, all the rules of the production stuff follow the same. The short run, the long run, all of those things follow the same thing. So if we turn around and we look here, so this is the demand curve. Here's the marginal revenue curve. Okay. So, a couple things to remember here. If we look at this point right here and we dot up to the demand curve, this part of the demand curve has an is inelastic, and this part of the curve here is elastic. Okay, that's just something you may have to be aware of. But the rules of producing where MC equals MR always exists. Oops, that's supposed to be an MR. That always exists. Okay. We know that in a monopoly, they are inefficient. Their quantity is less than a perfectly competitive market, and their price is going to be higher than a perfectly competitive market. So if we go ahead and we draw it, so now we know that they're going to produce where MC equals MR. This sets the quantity, but they're going to charge this price right here. Now, essentially, we know this is the demand curve, and this is essentially the supply curve. This would be where a perfectly competitive market would be. They would be right here, right, at a lower price and sell more goods. Okay, but I don't know what that is. Oop. So they charge a higher price and they produce lesser goods, so they're inefficient. Okay, they create dead weight here. Okay, they create dead weight. Right, they're inefficient. Okay, now in perfect price discrimination, there is no dead weight. Okay, so if we go ahead and we look at a monopoly, remember there's barriers to enter, all that kind of stuff. In a monopoly, um, the big thing is understanding the difference between the two. Here's marginal cost. Let's use a different color for average total cost. Average total cost. It's still the same rule. The bottom of the average total cost, it's here. So they'll produce right here, charge this price. This is their cost, so this is their profit. This right here is the dead weight. This part right here is the dead weight. Here is some consumer surplus. And essentially all of this down here is producer surplus. Okay. Part of that is the profit. Okay. Now, what happens, sometimes we look at the government will regulate, the government will put, sometimes the government will regulate monopolies and they'll put, what do they put in to regulate monopolies? Not quotas, they'll put in price ceilings. They'll put in a price control, price ceilings. Many times they'll put the price ceiling right here, okay? Um, and this, by doing that right here, essentially there's no profit. All right, they're at the break even point, but then the government will subsidize them with some sort of tax. If they do the socially optimal level, which is right here, right, they will have a little bit of profit, but the government will regulate monopolies to get them to produce more goods. Okay, they'll try to get them to produce more goods by regulating them. Okay, if the government are now the best thing for firms monopolies is to price discriminate. Okay, so I'll just do this here: marginal cost, marginal revenue. What we know typically, a monopoly will be here because they maximize their profit, and they'll be right here. But if they choose to practice price discrimination, they will actually charge. Oh, I want to change colors. No, that's not what I want. All right. So what they'll do is they'll charge different prices. They'll charge here and here and here and here and here and here and here. So there is no dead weight, but they're getting more profit out of it. That's why they would practice price discrimination. And you see that at places like when you go to the movies, they charge people different rates. When you go on an airplane ride, they charge people different rates to go on a ride. They're trying to maximize their profit by practicing price discrimination. Um, when you think of where people use coupons and other people don't use coupons, okay? So that is kind of what a monopoly does. Now, other than that, being able to tell us, what a monopoly looks like, what does perfectly competitive look like graphically, being able to explain what you're looking at, those are essentially what you'll need to know for this test. And we have, believe it or not, we don't have that much more. If I look in, we have to do oligopolies and perfectly competitive, or oligopolies and monopolistically competitive, which will actually be relatively quick. Okay. And then let me look through, and then we're going to do some the factor demands. Like we're going to actually do like labor demand curves and labor supply curves, which looks very similar to this. Instead of monopolies, we will say monopsonies. Um, and then we'll be done with the material that they're going to cover for the AP exam. Will there be FRQs to practice? Yeah, what I'll do for the FRQs, what I'll do is I will post some FRQs that do not use graphs as answers, and I'll post them and then we'll go over them. So what I'll do is when we'll practice those, I'll post those because what happens in FRQs, it will cover more than just one area of study. It might cover multiple things of study. So I'd like to cover a little more material, and then give you samples that cover a bunch of stuff. Um, and then what we'll do is I'll put them on our Google Classroom and I'll say, hey, work on these for the next 2 or 3 days, and then we'll come together and we'll go over our answers together. We'll try to do that. I can give you some with graphs Also, I can give you, I'll give you heck, I'll even put some multiple choice questions, sample question test things, just so that you can see what material you do and you don't know. Um, but I believe this test is not until May 20th or 21st. So we have plenty of time to practice that stuff. So I will get all that stuff to you. Um, and then after we take this exam, I'll probably do the same thing as I did before. Take a picture of your results and send them to you, and then roll through the test. Okay, I'll probably do the same thing as I did before. So yeah, if you have any questions, then that's the time to ask. Okay. Um, but yeah, I have all the videos from Unit 58 or Module 58 through 63. When are you posting this test? I'm going to post this test tomorrow at noon. Okay. Um, the I will post this tomorrow at noon. I'll probably give you an hour and a half, but you'll have 24 hours to do it. So if you do it tomorrow at 6, you start it at 6, you'll have till 7:30. If you started at midnight, you'll have till 1:30. So whatever time, I wouldn't start any later than Saturday at 10:30 because you only have 90 minutes to do it. So what units will they cover on the AP exam? On the AP exam, their units are different than my units. Um, they're covering in the AP College Board units 1 through 5, and they're not covering unit 6. And unit 6 for us is modules, the last little bit, the modules 74, 75, 76, 77, 78. So we're going to go through next week, we'll do 64 through 68. And then probably the following week, we'll do 69 through 73. And then we'll have covered all that material that they're going to test. Now, I'll probably make some videos that cover that stuff that's not on it, just so that we have it for for future use for myself. And I'll probably post it, but I probably post it on the website, but then not um, uh, 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 I'll just post it on the website. Okay. But yeah, we have plenty of time. Like I said, your guys' test isn't until like May 20th, I think I put, or 21st. So we have plenty of time to get that stuff in. Okay. Yeah, May 20th. Is it the 3 o'clock time or is it the 1 o'clock time? I forget. But yeah, we have plenty of time to do that stuff. And then heck, we don't even know. Maybe we'll be back in school by that time. Who knows? I don't know. No one knows. So um, I don't know if there's. So is there anything else? Other questions? Because I'll review and go back all over. Because Nori, I know you asked you emailed me or text me a question about something from Unit One. I think I will go back over because that was what comparative calculating comparative advantage with IOU and then OOO, right? I'll go back and review all that stuff. Okay. Do you have a guess about going back to school? I don't know. I don't know. It depends. Supposedly, this weekend is supposed to be the peak. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I wish I was a better scientist to tell you. Yep, there was that question on our first test that included that. Yeah, the IOU and the OOO. That's like, is it output other over or if it's input other under? Okay, that's just knowing whether or not you're dealing with data of input versus output to calculate comparative advantage. But I'll go over samples of that. From previous units. Okay. All right. Any questions? Any other questions? So once again, I'll post this stuff tomorrow, um, and And then, like I said, the next stuff, the next set of modules, which is what 64 through 68, are really simple. If you know, the hardest thing will probably be game theory, calculating game theory. Um, if you ever seen ever heard of the Nash equilibrium, or you ever seen the movie Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe? I mean, you got a lot of time. You could look at game theory through Russell Crowe, the movie A Beautiful Mind. The Nash equilibrium is all based on that movie and that stuff from there. So, I mean, that would be an extended learning for you. Okay. All right. Well, if that's done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause this and stop this. And um, yeah, we will go from there. Okay. All right. I will talk to you guys later. And if there's any questions, let me know. All right. Peace out. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you. I'm going to do macro here in a little bit. So, yeah, talk to you. Bye.